Most people think they know what people ate in the time of Jesus. Bread, fish, shared meals, moments of abundance. But that picture is misleading, because those moments were rare. What people lived was something else entirely. Food wasn't comfort, it was survival, and survival was uncertain. Most days were defined by scarcity, not provision. Small portions, limited choices, and the constant pressure of not having enough. And the problem wasn't just poverty, it was structure. As written in Leviticus, food was controlled, clean or unclean, allowed or forbidden. But laws don't remove hunger, they tighten it. Because when options are already limited, restriction becomes pressure, and pressure exposes reality. You can see it clearly in the accounts. As written in Luke 9, a crowd gathers, and the problem appears immediately. There isn't enough food. 5 loaves and 2 fish isn't a meal, it's a limitation. Luke focuses on what happens next, the provision. But John, in John 6, frames the same moment differently. He emphasizes the scale, the cost, the impossibility first. Same event, different lens. And that difference reveals something most people miss. Miracles stood out because they interrupted a much harder reality. A reality where food was uncertain, uneven, and often not enough. Bread wasn't symbolic, it was survival. So the real question isn't what was given in those moments. It's this: what did people actually eat every day? How close were they to hunger most of the time? And why do the accounts show abundance while quietly revealing scarcity? What people actually ate every day was not abundance. It was limitation. Bread was the center of everything. Coarse, dense, often stretched as far as it could go. It wasn't a side, it was the meal. Along with it, small fish when available, olives, a little oil, sometimes bitter herbs. Meat was rare, reserved for specific occasions, not daily life. This wasn't variety, it was survival. And even this was not guaranteed, because food depended on access, on cost, on what remained after systems took their share. As seen across the texts, daily life is never described as full, it's implied as constrained. Even in moments where people gather, the assumption is always the same: there won't be enough. This is why the feeding in Luke 9 becomes urgent so quickly. The crowd doesn't bring food because carrying excess wasn't normal. What they had was minimal. And John 6 reinforces this, emphasizing how far short the available food actually was. The problem wasn't unusual, it was expected. But they misunderstood something. This wasn't a temporary condition. It was normal life. Because when bread is survival, you don't eat to be satisfied, you eat to continue. And that changes how you see everything that follows. They didn't live with security, they lived close to hunger. Food wasn't stored in abundance, it was managed day by day, meal by meal. If one day failed, the next was already at risk. And this is where the second question begins to answer itself. How close were they to hunger? Closer than most people realize. You can see it in how often food appears in the teachings. As written in Matthew 6, the instruction is simple: ask for daily bread. Not future provision, not surplus, just enough for that day. Because that's how people lived, one day at a time, one meal at a time. And when that pattern breaks, the impact is immediate. This is why fasting, as written in Matthew 4, carries a different weight. It isn't stepping away from abundance, it's stepping deeper into a reality people already understood. Hunger wasn't foreign, it was familiar. Even labor reflected this pressure. Work didn't guarantee stability, it only delayed shortage. And systems didn't remove that risk, they often intensified it. Because survival sat at the edge, not in comfort. But they misunderstood something fundamental. This wasn't just physical. It shaped how people thought, how they listened, how they responded.
Because when you live that close to hunger, every mention of food carries weight. Every promise of provision feels immediate, and every moment of abundance feels unnatural. Which leads to the final question. If this was the reality people lived, then why do the accounts show something so different?
If daily life was this close to hunger, then why do the accounts feel so different? Why do they show moments of abundance that seem almost disconnected from that reality? The answer isn't contradiction, it's focus. The texts are not describing everyday life, they are highlighting interruptions to it. As written in Luke 9, the emphasis falls on provision, what happens when there isn't enough. But John 6 approaches the same moment differently. It slows down, stresses the limitation, the cost, the fact that what they had could not solve the problem. Same event, different intent. One shows the outcome, the other forces you to face the reality before it changes. And that contrast is intentional. Because the point was never that abundance was normal, it was that it wasn't. These moments stand out because they break the pattern people were used to. A pattern of managing scarcity, stretching resources, living one day at a time. When food appears in excess, it feels unnatural, because it is. But they misunderstood something. They remembered the moment and forgot the condition it interrupted. Because if you remove the scarcity, the moment loses its meaning. And once you see that clearly, the accounts don't conflict, they align. They show both sides, the reality people lived and the moments that disrupted it. And that leads to something deeper, because these moments weren't just about food, they were pointing beyond it. The story was never just about food, it was about what food revealed. A system where survival was uncertain, where people lived one day at a time, where bread meant continuation, not comfort. And into that reality, moments of abundance appeared, not as the norm, but as interruption. That's why the contrast matters. Because what the accounts show is not a world of plenty, but a world of pressure, briefly broken. And that shift changes everything. Because when people who live close to hunger experience provision, it doesn't just fill a need, it exposes the system around them. It reveals how fragile it really is, how little it actually provides. And this is where the deeper meaning begins to surface. Because if bread is survival, then control over bread is control over life. But what happens when that control is broken? What happens when provision no longer comes from the system, but from somewhere beyond it? That's the shift the accounts point toward. Not replacing one system with another, but moving beyond systems entirely, from external dependence to something internal. And that's why these moments were remembered, not because people were always fed, but because for a moment they weren't bound the same way. And that leaves a question that doesn't stay in the past. Because if people then lived one step away from hunger, how much of that has really changed? And more importantly, what systems today still control what we depend on most? And if this perspective shifted something for you, if it made you question what's presented versus what's real, then stay connected to this. Subscribe to the channel, be part of the conversation, and comment down your perspective below. Because the more we question what looks normal, the clearer we start to see what actually is.